The PlayStation Store Black Friday sale continues on, and today we're taking a look at single player experiences, games you can play by yourself, some of the best single player experiences that you can pick up in the PlayStation Store Black Friday sale. First of all, we have Uncharted, the Legacy of Thieves collection. This is a collection of both Uncharted, Thieves End, and Uncharted, the Lost Legacy for $20. PS5 version of this game, obviously, it's cheaper if you buy it on the PS4 because everything's more expensive on PS5. Both of these are great games though. For this price, you get them for about 10 bucks each. Really, really good mixture of storytelling and gameplay, and melding those two things into a really, really immersive way. Uncharted is arguably the first game that kind of kicked off Sony's kind of formula of how they tell games and how games are structured, from which now The Last of Us, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, all these games implement today. Speaking of Ghost of Tsushima, the director's cut is discounted down to $19.79. I've got like a little bundle here of different things you can pick up. You can pick up the PS4, PS5 version, just the PS4 version, or the upgrade to the director's cut from the original. It's confusing. There's a lot of different versions of this game, but I think the director's cut version is the one that comes with all the DLC, as well as the single player main game experience. Ghost, again, same as Uncharted, you have that narrative storytelling going between cinematics and gameplay, but this is an open world game, third person, set in Tsushima, Japan. You're playing as a samurai, and you're going through and fighting the enemy, the Mongols, in this game. They're doing a sequel to it as well, so really excited for this one. I would say, out of all of Sony's first party stuff that came out on the PlayStation 4, this is my favorite, maybe except for God of War, which is the next game we're talking about. God of War 2018. Obviously, I mean, I've talked about this so many times, you know what it is. Third person action game here with Kratos. A fantastic experience though. Like I was just saying, probably the best on the PlayStation 4. I think this is probably the best game that came out on the PS4, at least from Sony's first party perspective. Ghost of Tsushima is a very close second though behind this one. If you like fantasy games, Souls-likes, action adventure games, story games, this is great. These are all good story games. God of War is exceptional in terms of how it's storytelling mechanic between father and son, very similar to what was done in the original Last of Us between Joel and Ellie, father and daughter. The Last of Us Part 2 is discounted down to $10. TLU 2, like, while it's not quite as popular as the original Last of Us, it's still a really, really good, solid narrative, third person story game. The story might not be as strong as the original, and it might not go where you want it to go necessarily, but hopefully they can fix that with the TLU 3. You think they'll make a Last of Us Part 3? I feel like they will. I feel like they'll maybe try and redeem themselves with the Last of Us Part 3 to kind of put a cap on that whole series. I don't know. I feel like that is gonna happen, even though they've said it's not. I still think it will. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. This is weird, man, because this game never gets discounted heavily. 30 bucks is about as low as this goes. It's an Activision published game developed by FromSoft, the guy who do the Souls games, and this is one of the best Souls-like games out there. I don't think it's as good as Bloodborne necessarily, but it's a really solid Souls game. And for 30 bucks, you're getting decent value here, but the game is like 4 or 5 years old now, and it never sees a discount below $30. It really should be at that $20 price point. Although I've seen recently that the Dark Souls games are around that price as well, and those definitely should be cheaper. And I'm sure I've seen those cheaper, so who knows why, but yeah, this one retains value. Fantastic game though. Like, if you've got 30 bucks to spend, I highly recommend it. Great single player experience here to enjoy on your own. If maybe you can't afford Elden Ring or something like that, I think this comes in and will hopefully scratch that itch a little bit for you. Keena Bridge of Spirits is a mascot platformer. I feel like I've talked about this a number of times in these sales videos, so you're probably sick of hearing it, but it's a neat little mascot platformer if you're into those kind of games. Guardians of the Galaxy, another single player story game, one that people probably think is a co-op game or a multiplayer game because of previous Marvel game, Marvel's Avengers, but it's actually not. This is just a solely single player Guardians of the Galaxy narrative. It's similar to Uncharted or Tomb Raider, I think, in terms of like narrative structure and gameplay structure, even though it's set in space with Marvel characters. This is, apart from like Spider-Man, this is probably as close as they've got to a decent Marvel game though. So Guardians of the Galaxy, pretty good price for 20 bucks, only a year old as well. Alan Wake Remastered, a psychological horror psychological thriller third person game. It does have jump scares and horror elements into it as well. I've talked about this in another video, but it has a cool mechanic with the flashlight and the gun. We have to press the button frantically to reload the gun, like you're kind of frantically reloading a gun, but you have to kind of shine the flashlight at enemies before you can kill them as well. So it does that well. Again, another, I would say, incredibly narrative-driven game. Without the narrative, this one's gameplay probably wouldn't stack up, but the combination of the two obviously makes it. If I told you that Sony made this game, you would probably believe me, because it does have that kind of vibe of a Sony narrative third-person game. Mafia Definitive Edition. This is a remake of the original Mafia game from the PlayStation 2, which was great back then in the day, and they did a good job with the remake. Kind of sets in motion all of the events for the next two Mafia games as well in this one. I probably enjoyed it the most out of all three of those games too. I think it's a really solid remake. The game looks great, even though it was made back in the day. And the story is exactly the same, so they didn't really have to do too much, because it was a great story then. It's still a great story now. It just now looks even better. Klonoa Fantasy Riviera series. This is probably my game of the year for 2022, even though it's a remaster of two games, one from the PS1 and one from the PlayStation 2. They're 2D, 3D side scrollers, I would say, is the easiest way to kind of talk about them. They have really, really unique narratives to them as well. I think it's the story that kind of ties these two together, but some of my favorite games of all time, and definitely a highlight of this year. Strange that we saw these even come out, because I can't imagine they're super popular and most people probably have no idea what they are, but great games if you like platformers, side scrollers, mascot games, even Japanese style games. Great option here. Some decent discounts on the Resident Evil games, obviously all single player experiences. RE2, this is a third person game, obviously a full remake of RE2 rather than just a remaster or anything like that. They changed it from a tank controlled isometric style game to a third person action game. A great game here, introducing Leon as a protagonist, and then RE7, which is my favorite in the whole franchise, discounted down as well. The gold edition with all the DLC and all the extra content down to $16. Great price for this one. Awesome single player horror narrative in this one with some really terrifying moments too. Just Cause 4 Reloaded is down to $8, 80% off. This is more like a sandboxy thing, so rather than focusing on like single player narrative like most of the other games are, this is more gameplay and just kind of janking and messing around. Look, it's probably more fun to play just Grand Theft Auto 5 online, honestly, but if you're looking for something that's like a bit different but kind of still in that same vein as GTA 5, this is probably a good option for that. I think it will definitely tick those boxes for you. We've probably talked about these a few times in other videos, and you've probably heard about them or played them at some point, so apologies for that, but single player games that you can pick up in the Black Friday sale. Hopefully you enjoyed, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video.